Hello, everyone. I'm Sarrah Christensen, and thank you for joining me today. My topic today is dreams, and we're looking at the ancient tradition of how they would go through the divination process and the method that they used. I've been fascinated by dreams for several years. It was a dream that actually brought me into astrology. So I also kept dream journals for many years, and a couple years ago I connected with an individual who is a therapist but also an astrologer, and who's written a lot of books about this, and I went through about a year and a half of going through my dreams from a more contemporary point of view. And then in, I think, Norwalk of 2015, I attended Demetra George's lecture that brought this ancient tradition method of dream divination to me. And I was very interested, of course, and wanted to share that with you. And I also want to point out that I can see values in both, but I tend to go toward more the contemporary. So this is a little bit more of going and looking at how the ancients did it. So we kind of have to put on our hats of looking at what the ancients would have in their mindset versus what we have today. So there is a little bit of understanding that parameter. I'm also fascinated, just as a kid growing up, I remember being intrigued by one of the Bible stories about Joseph and his coat of many colors, and the dreams that he had, they were discussed in the Bible. There's multiple cases in the Bible stories where there's dreams. And so even from as a young age, I had learned kind of this fascination around dreams and what they can offer us in our understanding of ourselves and our life. And so off we go. So we'll explore this and see where it takes us and what kind of questions come up. So here we go. Sharing my screen to get to the slides. And hopefully, can you all see that? I can see it kind of chops off my words, but all right, I'm gonna.
Yes, Sarah, we can see.
Okay, perfect. All right, to start off with, I'm just gonna go through the methods, and this detail that I have in these bullet points is on that document that Linda shared into the files of our group. So you can always go to that and print it off and use it if you want to practice this. So the first thing, the ancient astrologers, they looked to the ninth house for dream interpretation, because the ninth house was the divine, God, the connection to God. And so we'll be looking at that as where we start. And they also used whole sign house systems as the ancient and medieval astrologers. So you'll see in my charts, which will shift you a little bit because it's going to be looking at whole sign houses. And so that's for exploring this method. For the more contemporary, I use porphyry. So I'll discuss that later, maybe a part 2 of doing this from a contemporary modern perspective. So for the dream interpretation, we'll always look to the ninth house, the sign, and the Lord using the traditional rulerships. The significator of the dream will be a planet. And we only use the 7 visible planets. We're considering ancient astrology or traditional astrology. We'll look at you go to the ninth house first, then you go to the 10th house, the first house, the 7th house, 4th or 3rd houses. So you check these houses in this order to see if a traditional planet is in that house, and it's the first one that you would land on in that given house. So when you get to that planet in one of those houses, you stop there, and that's where you start looking at the detail. And they also determine if there were no planets in these houses, the dream is false or of no significance. Okay. Then the planet that signifies the dream indicates the nature of the dream. So Saturn, if Saturn is the significator, it's something which brings fear. And if it's the tail or the south node with Saturn, more horrible and fearful. So it's very interesting, the dynamic of Saturn in the traditional. Being chased, fear of being killed. So it's like an emphasis of that Saturn. Jupiter is delightful things, kings, magnates. I hope I have that spelled right. Mars is bloodshed, battle, duel, destruction, hunt of wild animals. Sun is flying between heaven and earth, light, fire, and king. The sun with the north node, God, luminaries, flying in gold, excuse me. Venus was the significator of sex and games and pleasures, drinking bouts, fine clothing and jewels. And Mercury, paintings or writings, coins, buying and selling, houses of prayer. And the moon signifies the dream for sailors, sea, swimming, mother, or other women. And the tail, I gotta move this so I can see this. Excuse me. The tail or the south node alone or with other planets is darkness, dust, sadness, whispering, murmur, sick people, burying of the dead. So there's like a little bit more information on the south node as given from the previous version. And then the north node, the head, is alone or with other planets. It's greenness, fragrance, gold, pleasure, and gardens. So this is kind of like what we look at for when we get to the planet. That is the significator of the dream. Oops. Hold on one second. There we go. Did it go? There we go. And then dreams, the source of the dream is the next thing we look at, and that is the topic of the house ruled by the planetary significator of the dream. So the first would be the dreamer himself. If the ruler is the second, it'd be substance and money. Third is brothers. Fourth is the father. Fifth is children. Sixth is slave. Seventh is enemy, wife, or partner. I love that when they combine all those ones. Eighth is death or capture. Ninth is journey. And 10th is authority or king. And 11th is a friend. 12th is enemy or incarceration or any other things that the house signifies. Okay. Okay, then we look at the qualities of the sign, the significator of the dream. So we look at, is it feminine? And if it's feminine, it's high elevated place, fear of falling from a high place, sea, storms, great winds. Masculine, sunken place, struggle to climb up and out, narrow place, or place breaking away beneath the feet. Earth, or the last half of Sagittarius, stoned or fallen into a pit, narrow or restricted place, besieged and fearful of being overpowered. And in fire, which is Aries, Leo, in the first half of Sagittarius, someone hung or burned, fog, blackness, obscure mistiness. And then air is birds, winds, climbing of trees, flying, being chased. And a watery sign is boarding a ship, drowning, shipwreck, and flood. So this part of this method is a little harder to discern, I think, as we look at some of the dreams coming up. So I find this is the place that I'm probably going to be doing more research on to see what else I can find from the original source of Bonatti. So I've actually purchased the book to find out if I can find more information on it. And anyway, just wanted to put that in here. Then, as we look at the modality of the moon, we can determine what the effect of the dream will be. Is it a fixed sign of the moon? Then the dream will have an effect for good or bad, determining some other things based on the aspect of the moon or the significator, as it's linked to either a benefic or a malefic. Now, those are terms of traditional astrology. Benefic would be the Venus and Jupiter, and malefic would be Saturn and Mars. but essentially we will look at that as we get to it. Common, it would be the mutable signs. And so if the moon is in a mutable sign, something will appear from the dream. Okay. And if the moon is in a cardinal sign in the chart, it will disappear and not have any signification for the dreamer. Then the outcome of the dream, you look at the relationship between the significator of the dream, the planet that you're looking at, the Lord of the Ascendant, so what is the ruler of the Ascendant, and then the moon. What's the moon doing? Where is it at? And how is it positioned with Jupiter, Venus, Saturn, or Mars? Okay. If they all, two or one, joined with the benefic Venus or Jupiter, there's usefulness and goodwill follow from the matters of the house, ruled by the significator of the dream. So you're going to go where the significator of the dream, say it's ruling the 9th house. It kind of gives you what that would be about journeys, but we'll get into that more here in a minute. If the Lord of the Ascendant, the ruler of the Ascendant, is joined by the significator of the dream, or either one of them are connected to Saturn or Mars by aspect, and they also look in the traditional, not just by degree aspect, but by sign aspect. So if it's a square by sign, or an opposition, or sextile, and so forth. Either one joined to a malefic, something evil will come according to what is signified by a house ruled by that malefic. Okay, so hopefully that gives you kind of the rundown here, and a lot of this is kind of new for some of you. So hopefully that we'll get started here. You can go and grab that document if you want to have that to follow along. But here we go. That was put in the files under the group. So I wanted to share, before I go into the dreams, just a dream intention statement I did when I first started getting into dreams, 2008 or 9. And I ran by I got this from somewhere, just kind of created something from what somebody else had shared and made it my own. And I wanted to share it with other people if they wanted to explore this as well, because some people feel like they don't get dreams or they don't remember their dreams. I did this exercise not just with myself but with my sisters, and one of my sisters wasn't able to capture anything for about 3 weeks, and then she finally, after doing this every night, had a magnificent, unbelievable archetypal dream, which was pretty much floored her for how much it offered her in just one dream. So I'll just read it real quickly, but you can change it up a little bit, make it your own. You're basically requesting for your higher self to help you. So my dream intention statement is, I'm asking this night to receive a dream from my higher self for expanded self-awareness. I ask for a clear dream to be given to me during my sleep to allow for my expanded self-awareness to enable my conscious living intent. I appreciate the simple and easy to understand symbolism of stories offered to me in my dream state to bring forth my expanded awareness to direct my life with greater wisdom consciously. I shall recall when I am dreaming, and I am dreaming, and when I'm dreaming, I think I typoed that, and I shall recall all the details of my dreams when I am awake. I appreciate my guides and angels' help and love on my journey of expanded self-awareness as I heal the aspects of myself that block my greater potential. I'm ready to live harmoniously with my intelligence, my beauty, my strength and compassion within the whole, and allow my greatest potential to manifest in my life. Blessings are in abundance for my asking. Thank you. So, there you are. Here's a quick little snapshot, just so you have it, because I know from an EA perspective we use all the outer planets as well, but I want to kind of just give you a quick reminder that when I'm looking at the ancient traditional astrology, we're looking at the traditional rulers, which Saturn would then be responsible and rule Aquarius, and Mars would be responsible and rule Scorpio, and Pisces by Jupiter. And all the other ones, you know. So, okay. So this is a dream of a caterpillar and the snake I had on June 29th of 2017. So I'll read the dream really quick and then offer the breakdown. Here we go. Sorry, we got multiple pages here, so bear with me. Okay, so I noted the time when I woke up. So I have that from the chart, and the place of where I was when I had the dream. So that was here in West Richland, Washington. So here's the dream. The big fat caterpillar eating my potted plant, and the huge baby snake. In the dream, I'm in the house, and in my house, in the kitchen, I'm cleaning up counters and dishes. I noticed a potted plant at the slider door on the floor. Must have been brought in from the patio out of the weather. I see there is a big fat caterpillar on the small plant, and he's jolly fat like the fat caterpillar in a Bug's Life movie. I move the pot, the plant, and caterpillar, who is bright green and yellow, to the table or nearby counter. I looked out the slider door to the patio and noticed that there are some dishes out there I need to bring in to wash. So I went out on the patio, gathered things, and tidied up, and went back into the kitchen. After setting the dishes in the sink, I noticed that in the pot there now was a significant sized snake, dark, perhaps black, with a sliver of yellow on it, but its head was in the dirt, and there was an egg that was broken on the top of the dirt where the snake had come out of. So a recently birthed snake, but actually pretty big for just a newbie. I felt myself freeze and a bit of fear, as if it was a deadly type of snake, and I noticed that the caterpillar was no longer on the plant. It must have retreated into the dirt too, and the snake perhaps had found it there. I didn't know. I felt sad for the caterpillar. He seemed a goner from my viewpoint, and then I woke up. Okay, so taking a look at this dream from a contemporary standpoint, there's just lots of material there, but from the ancients, I wanted to see what the ancient method had to give me. So I have to find, let's see, that one was June 29th. Here it is. Okay, so I ran through and ran this down. So I looked to the ninth house at first, and I see there's no modern traditional planets in the ninth house. I go to the 10th, again, no traditional planets in the 10th. Now I go to the 1st. Now I can see the sun is the first planet I come to. So that's telling me the significator of the dream is the sun. And so I'm looking at the sun in the first house, and it's kind of telling me that the source is second house, because sun rules Leo. And so that tells me the dream is going to be about my values, income, money. Okay. Then I look at, and the sun is telling me that it's a kind of an expression flying between heaven and earth, light, consciousness, fire, a king. So not quite got my finger on it yet, but I'm getting closer. So that we're looking at the Leo, and now I'm going to look at the sign quality. Well, it's fire, it's masculine. Hold on one second. I just realized. Okay, yeah, so masculine is for the Leo, for the sun. So it's sunken place, a struggle to climb up and out, narrow place, or breaking away beneath the feet. So I'm looking at that just from the masculine standpoint on the values or the money or the income. So there may be a struggle, okay? So I'm looking at that as kind of the key word here. The next part would be fire, someone hung or burned, fog, blackness, obscure, mistiness. To me, this may be more, I would go to the word obscure. Maybe there's something I can't see. Or that it's just going back to the masculine word struggle. Then I go to the effect of the dream, which is the modality of the moon. And the moon is in Virgo. So that's common, which is mutable. So something will appear from the dream. And then the outcome is looking at the relationship between the significator of the dream, which is the sun, and is it connected to a malefic? It is. It's next to, it's widely connected. It's in the same house as Mars, so they look at it like that. And they would not look at it in conjunct. They would look at the Ptolemaic aspects. So because the sixth house doesn't see the first house, we're not concerned with Saturn with respect to the significator, but we do see that it is stressing the moon. So we have stress on the moon and we have stress on the significator of the sun from the Mars. So they would point out that an ancient astrologer would have looked at this as an issue with the money, loss of the money, you know, a struggle with money or debt or values. So just from a caterpillar and the snake dream. So I would look at this as looking at the talk about the ascendant. The Lord of the ascendant is the moon, so it's emphasizing the moon as well, because at the very end it says the Lord of ascendant is joined to the significator of the dream, which the sun is in that sign, or either one of them are connected with a malefic or joined to malefic. Something evil will come according to what is signified by house, ruled by that malefic. Okay, so this is 2017, June, and I can share that this is right before I had a lot of travel, and I had done quite a bit of, I did a massive amount of travel in 2017. So actually my finances were in stress on in two areas. One, I wasn't, because I work as a contractor, and so being away on the travel was limiting my potential to bring in income, and so that was a little bit of a stressor. And then when I was adding on to my debt by traveling in that year. So I would look at it from that, what's what it's telling me. And being that it's mutable, it did have some kind of effect in my life. So it's hard to kind of look at just the caterpillar and the snake in a literal, like, this I would look at two ways. I would probably lean towards more of a contemporary analysis with modern astrology because of the transits going on in that moment, and that's how I generally do this. But I was curious to see how would this language in, how would the symbolism language in the ancient method to see what it offered. So you can see it does get to an issue, and it did produce an effect in the life because of decisions that I made during that period of time, that I was just going to bite the bullet, as they say, and go ahead with my travel. And I did acquire debt that I'm paying off this year. So anyway, so that's that one. Next dream. Let's see what else we got. On July 6th, I had a dream about a kitten and a cat. So I'll go over this one really quick. So on July 6th, 2017, I had a dream. I woke up at 7:09 a.m. and this is the chart. So if we look, I'll go into the divination chart in just a minute. So here's the dream. And I only recalled parts of the dream, not the whole dream. I was somewhere where people adopt pets, especially cats. Something had brought me to this place where the cats were. But I thought that the guy who ran the place was not the best person to be watching and caring for the animals. The place was not that well laid out for animals. It seemed unorganized and a bit messy. I saw a few cats, but two stood out to me. Both seemed to have Siamese markings, one with longer hair, tan with black markings and blue eyes, and she was a mature cat. The other was a kitten with soft gray and white with tabby and Siamese mix. Very cute and blue eyes too. I was fond of both of them. The mature cat had such a calming presence. I really felt peaceful with her. I recall the kitten had been down in the ditch-like area that had been dug out on this property in the fenced backyard. I had to climb down to get her from out of this deep trench. Seemed like it was 6 or 8 feet deep. But it was cooler down there, so I think she was there to get out of the heat. She was quite clean for being in the ditch with all the dirt. I then recall having them at my place with cat doors on the garage and cat door to the inside so they could come and go as they wanted. I had a huge play tree in the back patio for them too. I saw images of them laying on the patio in the shade. As I woke up, I wondered about these beautiful kitties. And they also had features of kitties I would like to have as pets one day. Okay, so here's how we go about looking at this from the traditional method. We look at, hold on a second, I see. Okay, so the 9th house, we don't have any traditional planets in there. 10th house, no traditional planets. We get to the 1st house is the next one we go to, and we see Mercury. Mercury is in the house. So Mercury becomes the significator of the dream. Okay, so I look at Mercury. Mercury as a significator is about paintings or writings, coins, buying and selling, houses of prayer. So nothing, I have been writing a lot. This is last year. Buying and selling. I had just purchased a home, so I don't know if it has anything related to that. Paintings, I'm not really painting. Houses of prayer, not really active there. So it may be related to the writing. Okay. Source of the dream. So where does Mercury rule? My money house, Virgo. And then I go to Gemini, which is the 11th house. So I'm looking at friends or groups. And so when we look at, so it's substance of money, and then 11th as they have it as friend. The sign qualities of the significator of the dream. So we're looking at Mercury's in Leo. Leo is masculine, so sunken place, struggle to climb up and out, narrow place, or a place breaking away beneath the feet. So the kitten was down in the ditch. So I would say sunken place here. Maybe a narrow place. It was a narrow ditch. So again, that seems to fare well here. And being in Leo, someone hung or burned, fog, blockiness, obscure. Again, I would probably say this is obscure. It's not easily seen. And then the effect of the dream is the modality of the moon. So we look for the moon. It's over here in Aries. So the Aries is a cardinal sign. So it's basically saying it will disappear and not have any signification for the dreamer. So I could stop right there. So it's basically telling me the dream is just a fluff dream. And so it's not going to be anything that's significant. And the outcome of the dream is then kind of a moot point here. So I could go into analyzing that, but I wouldn't go any further because it's telling me by the moon itself that it's not significant. Now, I remember having a moment during this period of time that I really was desiring a kitty cat, and maybe a couple kitty cats, but because of my travel, I thought it would be irresponsible of me to do so. And so I just had, kind of that wishing and longing for a pet at that moment, but I kind of decided that I would defer that till another few years out. So anyway, so there's that one. Okay, August 2nd, I had another dream in 2017. And this was an interesting dream. So I'll just read it for you real quick. I woke up around 7:14 a.m. and so I took the chart for the time. There was a lot more in the early part of the dream I don't recall, so this is the end part. The part of the dream I recall is, in the dream, a group of people, including myself, are being pursued through a building by a mob. I am running. I'm at the back nearest the mob trying to reach us. The group is running through hallways and rooms. I know they are going to the secret way out, but I'm not sure what that is, where that is. As the group disappears into the wall hidden closet, I am a bit behind and I don't see where they go in. I am running behind the hidden escape route, but I know I've gone too far as I don't hear them ahead of me. So I go back a bit and look around a room that has clothing strewn about. Just then, a big warrior guy, he's huge, like huge, ginormous Viking guy, and he comes back to guide me through the secret door. When we get through and to the other room that leads out, I thank him for coming back to get me. He says, "Of course, you are my Wami." And I was like, well, Swami? Wami? I don't even know what that word means. I knew it was like a beloved term, as if we'd known each other for eons in other places and realms. And then I woke up. Okay, so looking at our method here, we go to the 9th house. We don't see any traditional planets there. 10th house, no traditional planets there. And we get to the 1st house and we see Mars, and Mars becomes our significator of the dream, which is interesting because Mars is about bloodshed, battle, duel, destruction, hunt of wild animals. And in this part, I would put it as a warrior here, is we're running from a conflict of some sort from a mob. So Mars is our significator. Okay. The source of the dream is wherever Mars rules. Well, Mars rules Aries, so this will be journeys. 9th house, a journey. And this is right before August 2nd. I'm leaving on a trip to Hawaii, I think like 7 days or 8 days after this dream, to go get married. And then after that, I go on a big trip to Europe. So interesting, this is calling in kind of the journey piece here. So, okay, that makes sense. Then I look at the sign qualities of the significator of the dream. Well, that would be masculine. So the significator is Mars in Leo. So Leo is masculine. So it'd be sunken place, struggle to climb up and out, narrow place, or breaking away beneath feet. And I'm trying to get out of a narrow place or some kind of passage. So that seems to be a place I'm trying to navigate. Fire, someone hung or burned, fog, blackness, obscure. So there's something obscure. And interesting, it would say blackness, and I'll bring an understanding to that term in just a moment. The effect of the dream, modality of the moon sign. The moon is in Sag. And the moon being in Sag, its mutable comment says something will appear from the dream. And then outcome of the dream is the relationship between the significator, which is Mars, the Lord of the Ascendant, which is the Sun, and they're connected right here in the 1st house, and then the moon. So the moon is actually trine fire to fire that way. But so the stress would be something on myself. And the moon has Saturn in the 5th house with it. So there's a stress on the moon. And of course, 5th house is children. So to give you a little snapshot of this one is when I was in Hawaii, indeed something did happen. My daughter, which is the child here, was stung by a jellyfish man-o-war. That's how you call them. 2 days before we got married. And we were taking a walk on the beach at night, can't see anything, that's the obscure darkness. And she's, running in and out of the surf with her toes, and out of the blue, she just screams. And of course, now we have something happened, and we find out that she's been stung by a jellyfish that wrapped around her ankle. And so, you know, I had to help her through that process of getting help, because it really was really painful for her and stressful for me. But we made it through. Someone local there understood that you put vinegar on the wound, and she made it through, but it was a couple hours of getting through the pain. So interesting that the combination kind of shows up here. And when I think about the dream and the warrior that comes back, I kind of think of two things. My husband was, well, about to be a husband, now my husband, was very supportive in the moment. But my daughter, it was like a moment kind of bonding with my daughter. I literally carried her on my back clear up to the condo where we were at. And she was like, wow, Mom, you're so strong to do this. So working out paid off. But that was an interesting kind of look at this dream from that angle. Of course, I did analyze this dream from more of a more psychology-based Jungian perspective, and there's more to it from that angle. But I thought from a traditional standpoint, there was some interesting correlations here that something did happen and kind of how it worked out in the dream. Oops. Okay, so I'm going to do Regina's dream next. So bear with me here. There we go. So Regina's dream, this was on April 3rd, oh no, that's the wrong one. Hold on. The dream was December 22nd, so just this last year, December 22nd, 2017. And the waking time was 7:30 a.m. Central Time. So I pulled up the chart under the whole sign house. So we have that. So I'm going to read the dream, and then we'll go into exploring it here. And my notes. Hold on a sec. So here we go. Okay. So her dream is, it was well past dark as I stood in the middle of a green open field illuminated only by the stars and moon. I could see tall white pillar stones in the distance. There were people I did not recognize standing in front of me in complete silence. I realized I was pregnant and intuitively decided it wasn't time yet and I was about to give birth, but the time was not quite right. So I decided to go and sit down because I knew I would need to focus and conserve my energy for the birth. I walked away and found a chair to sit in, but as soon as I sat down, I was instantly teleported back to the open field in the same spot I was previously standing in. And before I could wrap my mind around what was happening, the baby fell out of the ground. Baby fell out of me onto the ground. I looked down in shock, and a wave of fear washed over me. Fear for the baby's life, and that's when I noticed the baby's left leg had broken off at the knee. I began to sob deeply and heavily as the sadness emerging from deep within me took over. I began to breathe and slowly came to terms with the reality that lay in front of me. I forced a smile and said to myself, okay, I can live with this. It's not so bad. There is technology available, and the child can always walk with a prosthetic leg. We will get through this together. Feeling determined, I made peace with my reality, and I was prepared for the work over the long haul. But just as I was coming to grips, everyone started pointing fingers at the child and began to shake their heads in a disagreeing manner, as if they had read my thoughts. I looked down and saw there was a puddle of blood spilling upon the green grass that was coming from the child's head, and I knew without a doubt, deep within my bones and soul, that the child was dying, and there was nothing I could do about it. And I was being forced to surrender to the inevitable. I dropped to my knees and began to scream from the depths of my soul as the pain was too much to bear. And then I woke up. So we have a very intense dream here from Regina. So let's look at how this breaks out from the ancient tradition. Are you there, Regina?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. And so I'm going to go through what the divination is first, and then we can dialogue about it. I look at this dream, and I probably would have more fun with it from a contemporary perspective, but let's just see how it goes with it, okay? So I look at the 9th. Athena is in the 9th in the whole sign house. In the 10th house, we also have no planets. And as soon as we get to the 1st house, what do we see? We see Saturn. We see Saturn and Capricorn. So right out of the gate, I'm looking at something that which brings fear. So we can see that in the dream. Then the next thing is, okay, so what houses does Saturn rule? Well, traditionally we absolutely have Capricorn, but we also have Aquarius. So we have a dream that's giving us connotation around the 1st house, which would be you as the individual, yourself. And the second part would be income, money, values, something along those lines in their specific substance, your own substance, your own money, okay? So this is kind of where the fear would, this is where an ancient astrologer would guide you here. So we're looking at the qualities of the sign. And this is interesting. So this is, for the significator of the dream is Capricorn, and Capricorn is feminine. Cardinal Earth, right? So we're looking at a high elevated place, fear of falling from a high place, sea storms, great winds. So I can take that literally, which odds are pretty high that they probably look at these things pretty literally, but I would say that there's fear here of falling off the track of what you would like for your dream, or from the dream from what you want for your own income and money, right? For yourself. So there's a fear for the self of how you take care of yourself with your substance, right? Okay, and then the next part is it's earth, yeah, and that would be stoned or falling into a pit. I don't see that. Narrow or restricted place. I don't see that in your dream either. Besieged and fearful of being overpowered. This, I think, is in the dream a little bit. So I would say there's kind of a feeling of being taken over by this thing, this idea, this feeling, right? And then lastly, we look at the mode of the moon. The moon is in Aquarius, right in the 2nd house. So its modality is fixed, because we're just looking at the modality at first. So the dream will have an effect for good or bad, is how they would put it. Right. And then the outcome, now we're thinking about, okay, the outcome, we don't know good or bad, so we're going to see how they would maybe look at one or the other. So the relationships between the significator of the dream, the Lord of the Ascendant, which is one and the same, Saturn, Capricorn, same, and the moon. Well, the moon is in the sign, but the 2nd house does not have a Ptolemaic aspect to the 1st house, so it doesn't have a tie there. So, but where's Mars? They would look at Mars because it's the lesser malefic, and looking at it but it's in a sextile, so it's not having a plus or minus. It's just there. From that perspective, it may have a little bit more emphasis because Jupiter is positioned in the Scorpio next to the Mars, and sextile to the 1st house. However, if we were to talk about the moon situation, just the moon itself is under stress, because that's so the money, your substance is under stress, and probably an indicator of this dream because it's under stress because of the Mars in the square. Okay. So they would say it would not turn out very well for you. So I would, yeah. So that would be, and let's see, and so So since you've had this dream in December, it's been about, what, 2 months-ish, yeah?
Yeah.
How has anything come to you that stresses your money or stresses your feelings about your income potential, or has something manifested that is like, oh, that's not favorable? Because
Well,
that's
actually,
how you look at it.
well, actually, there is a situation that come about. What's interesting is that I had the dream before, like, the actual situation had manifested.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's a situation, like, with my son and his school and, like, the issues that he's having. And so with that, it's like I'm looking into maybe trying to put him into, like, a private school. So right there's money issues around that, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's really interesting. So that has definitely come to surface. So I don't know. It's just so interesting to think that I had the dream beforehand, but then that manifested afterwards.
That's what they indicate. So the traditional
Right,
would say that if you're having a dream and you follow these guidelines, it's pointing to that it would manifest something positive or negative,
right,
in
good or bad.
good or bad in there. Some of us in contempt, now would say, well, it's a spiritual journey, it's all goodness, but
Right.
they would be more Saturnian-like and look at this as not favorable. And interesting, I would just step a little bit further because the Mars is looking on the other side from the 11th to the 5th. So it's traditionally, they would say it's throwing a ray into the 5th. And so that would be difficult for the son, the child's
Right.
situation, and it's stressing the money. So, and so it's interesting. Yeah. So
Definitely.
I think this is just interesting to explore because, and there's one other piece that I'm still quite the amateur on, where the ancient tradition, and it really gets down to the moon more often, but I think it does also to the significator, is the understanding in depth the triplicities and the trigons. And I'm not that solid, but that's something I am studying. But I didn't come up against any issues so far on that, but in terms of where it's at. But I think that adds another depth to the understanding from the traditional, trying to navigate some of the traditional understandings. It's just like,
Right.
okay, getting that here. And exploring it from that perspective. And I was tempted to, like, wanting to dive into the more Jungian analysis of what's going on here in the subconscious mind, because
Right.
whole nother, I underlined words in your dream. And so I was like, oh, that would be this and this and this and this from the other perspective, but I didn't want to muddle up the presentation. And we could totally take this from another angle at another time and have fun with that. But I was curious to see how it would present with the traditional method. So, which is interesting. So,
well, I'll add, from the traditional perspective, no, not just the income or the money, but, values.
mm-hmm.
So it's reassessing my values and what I need to do.
Yeah.
In the particular situation as well. So,
So it is. Yeah. Excellent. Who's my next one? Well, thank you, Regina. That's all I have on that one. So thank you.
Okay, Sarah, how about we have...
Do you want to take a break and then come back? Yes. Okay, I wanted to ask you that.
Pausing the recording just here.
Okay, and we're back. Okay, so the next dream we have is from Erica. Are you there, Erica? Okay, let's see. We have her dream took place on November 30th, 2017, and I cast the chart in whole sign house here at 7:30 a.m. her time. I think Egan, Minnesota.
Yep.
So here's the dream. It says, I was sitting at a table with family and would occasionally get up from the table to throw snakes off of a porch. I love that. And a goat then came and fell from the porch, but I grabbed it back up onto the porch. I looked down from the porch and saw a peacock in the garden down below. That's her dream.
Yep.
So like, oh, I could have so much fun with this on the other side of this, but we're going to go ancient tradition and see what we got.
Okay.
Okay. Now here's the thing. Nothing I'm seeing from traditional like Saturn planet for, into Saturn, all the inner planets. Nothing in the 9th, nothing in the 10th. We get to the first house, so it's 9th, 10th, 1st, and we see the sun is right there. So it's the first one. So sun is the significator of the dream, okay? And sun is, let's see here. It's about flying between heaven and earth, light, fire, and a king. Okay?
Okay.
The source of the dream, it is the topics of the houses ruled by the planetary significator. So the sun rules Leo, right? So we go up to the 9th house. We see Leo in the 9th, all right? Mm-hmm. So 9th is journey. Now, I would say it's more than journey, but that's just me. They have just journey, so we'll take it as journey at first. I would also say that it's potential of 9th house themes such as God, divination, and so forth. That's a theme of the 9th house, but they have it listed here as journey, so I'm going to start with that first. So the next part is what are the sign qualities of the significator of the dream? Oh, sign quality. Oh, so it's in Sagittarius, sun in Sagittarius, so that would be mutable and fire, right? Excuse me, masculine and fire. Now it's in the first portion of Sagittarius, so we have to look at that. So first it's masculine, sunken place, struggle to climb up and out, narrow place or a place breaking away beneath the feet. None of those add up to me. I almost feel like it's the first one, or I feel like it's falling from a place, but we're going to go with what it says here. Sunken place, struggled to climb up and out, narrow place, or place of breaking away beneath the feet. Okay. And then in the first half of Sagittarius, someone hung or burned, fog, blackness, obscure. So a travel that would be not a journey that would be obscure to you. Okay? Or a truth. I'm going to put that one in there. Okay?
Okay.
The effect of dream is the modality of the moon. And we looked at the moon. The moon is in the 5th in Aries. So Aries is cardinal. So it will disappear and not have any signification for the dreamer. So we could just stop right there and say this was just one of those lovely dreams that we get that just throws a lot of stuff as the mind goes to sleep. But if we want to look at further, it would say, what's the significator of the dream, which is the sun, and what's the lord of the ascendant? That's Jupiter. And the Jupiter rules the sign that the sun is in, and the Jupiter's in the 12th house in Scorpio. And then where's the moon is, trine fire to fire. So in that way, it's an easy flow for that. But the Jupiter is more obscure in the 12th house. So they would probably stop at the traditional. It's like, well, there's nothing that's going to be coming of this dream, so we would drop it right there. However, I would dive into this from the other perspective and say that there's a lot going on in this dream, because when you have snakes in a dream, to me, there's some kind of transition of your consciousness going on.
Yeah.
Transformation. So, but that's a contemporary thing, and we can bring that up in the contemporary version of this if you like. So what are your thoughts? Do you have
My
some?
thought?
Yeah.
Well, that dream came about, I guess I had removed toxic people from my life. I am going through like a Saturn and Pluto are transiting like a heavy stellium in Capricorn of mine right now. I mean, I quit my job last Monday. Like I'm kind of in limbo. I don't really know what direction to take, and so.
So change for you personally.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't. From an ancient perspective, maybe there would be other dreams that you would potentially look to that would bear more weight for a traditional method and technique. But again, compare and contrast here between the traditional method and, contemporary. I mean, I would probably go contemporary here.
Yeah, I definitely looked at it from that perspective after I had it. The garden was like not flourished at all. It was like a dead garden. So the peacock down there. So I was interpreting that was kind of difficult. But
yeah, from an ancient perspective, I don't have it based on the navigation of by the rules here and by the significator of the dream being the sun. It would seem that it was giving you kind of the connection between heaven and earth because of the sun, or just light, or so. Yeah, it doesn't bear out anything from a truth perspective because it's ruling the ninth house. Yeah, the sun is ruling the Leo in the ninth. So I'm not seeing anything jump from this technique for this particular dream.
Yeah, I agree. Because I do have that Capricorn stellium. It is in the ninth house because I have a lot of vivid dreams. I mean, this morning for some reason I woke up and all I want for Christmas is you was stuck in my head. So I'm like, what is this? Like waking up from that dream, but and there was a busy bee. There was a busy bee in my dream right before I woke up this morning.
Yeah. So
I mean, I enjoy dreams very much. So
yeah. Well, thank you for sharing. Sorry, I didn't have more fruit there for you.
No problem.
Time to explore to see, what it does offer us in perspective. So thank you. All right,
thank you.
I'm going to go on to Vanessa's dream now. Hi, Vanessa.
Hi. Thank you.
Now, Vanessa also has a lovely dream that I would love to go into from the contemporary psychology side of the house, but we're going to look and see what it has to say on this method. Okay, so I'll go ahead and read the dream, and then we'll jump into the divination process here. Okay, so this dream she just had right about when I asked, I need a dream, bring one forth. So this is February 19th. 4:11 a.m. you woke up from the dream, and Portland. Okay, so the dream started with Vanessa finding herself in some town in Turkey. It felt very real. I'm going to read it in the first person. Okay, it felt very real, and I started wondering what was happening. Then I find that I can raise myself in the air, which I have never been able to do in dreams, only a couple of inches above the ground. And I could see far into the distance. I could see the mountains, valleys, and the rest of the city. Then in telepathy, I ask why I'm in Turkey. And a voice just says, visiting. Then I find myself flying over another city. I can see everything, houses, people on the streets, old ladies talking at the corner store. I'm amazed that I'm flying in my dream. I ask where I am, and this telepathic voice says, Valencia, Spain. But it also says that I had a past life there. I'm surprised about that. Then I asked to show me another place. It tells me that Valencia is my south past life, and I can see in my mind's eye the 4 directions. I know there's more to the meaning that this is a south past life, but I don't inquire. The voice says it will take me to my north past life, and it's in Iceland. I find myself in a house in Iceland, and there's a gathering happening. Everything feels very alive. I really feel that I'm there. Everyone in the house can see me. The voice tells me that it's gathering of souls who have had a life in Iceland, and that I'll see some that have been with me before. I then see my friend Juliana. In this life, we met in college, and I visited her 2 weeks ago. We've been friends for over 20 years. That's in parentheses. She comes to greet me, and we are both joyous to see each other. She's very happy, peppy self. Then the voice tells me that I had been her older sister many centuries ago. And Juliana and another girl had been my very young sisters. I was about 8 or 9 years old when I was mauled by a wild animal when I was walking with them near the woods to get food. I had saved their lives by protecting them with my body. Then I can see the scene in my mind's eye. Then Juliana takes me to where some of the food for the party is. They are cooking some special Icelandic breads. Not sure how real that is in relation to Iceland now. Haven't tasted their breads when I visited there 2.5 years ago. I see the ladies taking these interesting breads out of this large baking pan. Then Juliana gives me one of them. It's a sort of bread with pieces of chocolate inside. It looks very artisan and smells great. Juliana tells me that it's from another past life, also in Iceland, where that bread played an important part in the working relationship I had with another woman who was my colleague at work. There was something about jealousy and envy at work. I don't know what happened, but Juliana points out the lady for me at the gathering. It's a young blonde woman whom I've never met in this life. She's very talkative to everyone, and I can sense her deep-seated insecurities. Juliana steers me away from this woman so that I don't have to see her now. Then the dream shifts into what I would consider a normal dream. In this case, I find myself sleeping in a queen-size bed, but in a room that I didn't know existed in the law firm that I used to work. Then I find myself walking the hallways of this law firm and run into a good friend. She asks if I want to come and work there again, since there's an opening to work for this partner. I tell her definitely not for reasons X, Y, and Z. She understands my feelings. And the funny thing is about this is the friend left the law firm before she did in real life. Last fall. Or not last fall, just in real life. Then the dream morphs some more, although it stays with the law firm characters, but that's what she gave me. Okay, so that's a lot going on in her dream. It's probably multiple dreams in one. So just going from the ancient method, we can see the 9th house, we don't have anything. 10th house, we don't have anything. And then we go to the 1st house and we see we have Saturn in Capricorn again. So this tells me there's something about something which brings fear. Okay. Then we look at the source of the dream, and that would be the topic of the house that it rules. So it would be the self. So this would be Vanessa herself, but also 2nd house, something that she values, or her substance. Sign qualities of the significator of the dream is feminine for Capricorn. So high elevated place, fear of falling from a high place, sea storms, great winds. In the dream, she's flying, so that's kind of the high place. I kind of put kind of high elevated place. She's flying in the dream, and she never had that before, so that's kind of new. And then it's Earth for the Capricorn. So we look at Earth, stoned or fallen into a pit, narrow or restricted place, besieged and fearful of being overpowered. In the dream, the only indicator of that are her being aware of a past life where she was overtaken by the wild animal. And then That's the only one that kind of jumps out. Maybe the woman in the dream that's in Iceland that she has this kind of difficult relationship with from past life. That's all that seems to jump out from a traditional perspective here. The effect of the dream is the modality of the moon. So we go into the 4th house, we see the moon there. The moon is in Aries, so that's cardinal, and it will disappear and not have any signification for the dreamer. So from a traditional, they would stop right there. I, on the other hand, think this is loaded for Vanessa and what it's offering her. And of course, I think this speaks to the psychology that we see in the unconscious and understanding with what we have now. And I'm looking at just the moon connected to the significator of the dream, Saturn. There's a square from this, but of course, we wouldn't probably go this far. Mars is in the 12th, not kind of looking upon the 1st, but it is in a trine, so it's not affecting the moon. The thing that's affecting the moon in this would be the Saturn, so making it a challenge from that regard. Venus is in the 3rd, so it's a kind of giving it some beneficial juice towards the 1st, because she's a benefic in the ancient. And Jupiter is also from the 11th. So from that, it would, if it went any further, it would say that there would be some help towards the Saturn from those two benefics touching it from sextile. So, thoughts, Vanessa?
I know. I think it's. Thank you. I know. When you asked for a dream, I complied. Very long dream.
It's a good one.
Sorry about that. But yeah, it's interesting that it says, no effect for the dreamer. I felt that it was a dream that is one that comes very rarely. I felt like a big dream.
Yeah.
And one that I think I can dig in for quite a while.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. We could revisit this in the next one I do and bring it to the psychology and the current transits perspective in this moment that you're having it. Because I agree with you. When I read your dream, I was like, wow, there's so much in here that's offering symbolism for you that's coming from the unconscious mind, not only from the past life perspective, but in the moment now, kind of the end of the dream as well. And I was like, the tradition method, I don't think bears weight here. And I think the descriptions under when you get into the sign qualities of the significator of the dream, and this is Capricorn for this one, there could be fear related to the dream in that perspective in some capacity. But I think what I got from your dream was that you're getting like a high view, it's elevating you on purpose in the dream to give you that, like, looking, down, looking into something from a distant view. So there's like more objectivity to it, like emotions are a little bit more indirect. Yeah. And I thought, that there's a lot going on there to take from the other perspective, but it cuts it off just by the modality of the moon in the moment. And so that makes me wonder about it misses the psychology of what we have now and what we have, that perspective. But it's almost telling me, like, back then this would have just been nothing, because we don't have that understanding, right? Like, it would have never occurred that it had weight to it.
Or they would tell me not to go near the woods because I would be mauled by a wild animal.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think that's interesting. I mean, I agree with the higher perspective. I mean, it was as far as I remember, the first dream I got to fly, which has always been a frustration for me when people say I fly, and I'm like, gosh, I never fly, and I did. And I thought it was interesting with the whole past life and my friends, and even the law firm, which in some ways is sort of my quote unquote past life in this life.
Yeah.
So I think that was but maybe it's if we were to think of Saturn as the fear, I would interpret then as well as sort of the fear of what is it uncovering, even though in the dream at no point at all I felt any fear even when I got to see how I died.
Right.
So
because I think you're purposely at a distance for the context of what you got, and probably there's two things that were very interesting to me about your dream. Excuse me. One is that you're having the perspective that your life was laid on the line. You died, and the younger sisters were saved, right? So your body becomes the smarter thing. And then so it's kind of almost like karmic. And then I thought I thought about bread, body, kind of connection between the two. And then at the very end is like the discussion around the job at the law firm, which is very Capricorn, Saturn.
Yes, very Saturn.
So I was like, okay, that's kind of interesting. So it may be that I'm missing something in the brief descriptions. I don't think so. I'm trying to follow it line by line here. And I didn't sense like any fear in your dream. It's almost like a higher spirit level of awareness of life.
Yeah, and that's why I felt like it was kind of, I guess, a big dream, because it was stuff I could even imagine. But maybe the way that you could flesh out this is to bring in the multi-layered perspective, our knowledge of depth psychology and everything, to the breakdown of the way they sort of help you break it down. That could be the entry point. So
right.
I will go back to the notes that you shared and go and look at that and think, oh, okay, so
from that approach.
Yeah. Because I think there's a way to weave this ancient perspective with our modern perspective.
Yeah.
And I'll just highlight too, Saturn, as is now 6 degrees of Capricorn, is 2 degrees away from my North Node in Capricorn. So I can see, when I looked at it as a transit chart, I was like, oh, there it is. Karmic.
Right. And I don't, from Demetra's examples at Norwalk, there was, I don't think we looked at someone's nativity, though they would always in the tradition look at mostly at the nativity whole, like everything's based in the natal, the natal chart. But most of the examples were like this, where you have the chart from the dream and then the divination as it's carried out. So, yeah.
Yeah.
This is like percolating new questions for me about the definitions under not just the source of the dream. That's fairly clear because that's like house themes, right? But it's like the sign qualities, feminine, masculine, and then how those are described. Those seem kind of, some of them fit, but most of them, like the feminine, masculine, earth of the last half of Sagittarius, or earth plus the last half of Sagittarius, fire, and then the first half of Sagittarius, and air and water, they have like such limited description. So it doesn't encompass more that we have are in awareness now. So it's very Saturnian-like, I guess. It seems like it's got these really tight limits on it, right? Like what they could signify in the dream. So
yeah, but I would think that's the canvas, right? If you think of, like just thinking about the bread and the body, it's earth. right? Everything goes back to matter, mother, you know.
Yeah.
And that this is great.
And and then the queen size bed. Okay, so there's like other symbolisms here that, you know, kind of jump out. So anyway, anyone have questions so far, or curious thoughts have popped during this discussion? I'm already having my own from exploring this with you that are like, ooh, I want to like look into that a little bit more about these definitions of the dream.
I have a comment.
Sure.
It seems to me that I think you're on the right track of the fact that now we have higher and different realms available to us than they did when they were talking about these definitions. I mean, it is very Saturnine and very traditional and very old. And since then, we've discovered, you know, new planets that have opened up, you know, new realms. I think you're onto something with that.
Yeah, it's like weaving the two together. This just seems to be what my position is, because I do the same things with what seems that from the past that can be woven in, that makes sense, to bring a little bit more insight to what the soul is doing and its purpose and in its evolution. It gives it a little more flavor or spice or whatever. I find that. I'm maybe an odd duck in that way. I don't know. I have Mercury out of bounds in the 10th house. God bless it. So I tried to look at things in all these different ways that, well, there's got to be some kind of, they're coming from the same material that makes, you know, a different lens of view, and then we're just looking at it differently. So I've been interested to kind of see how this behaves. And what's interesting about this is because Neptune, of course, is how we look at the 12th house right now, and Pisces, and kind of that theme around dreams, where my north node is, and where Pisces, where Neptune is heading towards my north node right now with Venus right there. I'm curious about like what that brings, you know, because the modern way of looking at it and what's in transit, what's kind of going on, and how we can look at it from that angle versus this absolute, this is black and white, going to be this or that. So yeah, it does kind of push on some things, but some seem to play out even in the traditional method. But during the process of going through these, I found myself wanting to kind of share what I learned from exploring these on the other side of the house. Because I felt like I was being put in a box, and each time trying to figure out what is it saying, what is it revealing here. So anyway, but I have more that I have on my own dreams, but we're at 5 to 4, so it depends on if you guys want to discuss any more.
Well, Sarah, we do have half an hour left if you want to fill it up.
Okay, everybody wants more dreams? Okay, I have some more. Let's see what I got here. Of the 2 snakes. So bear with me here. Of course, right before this morning or yesterday, my printer stopped working, so I have to read off my other screen here, so bear with me. Okay, so this was a dream I had in March of last year, so last spring. And so the dream goes, I woke up at about 7 a.m. So I had a dream the first night. I was at the AP retreat in Calistoga. I go to Stephen Forrest's the Northern California retreat each year. So this happened at the retreat. I had lunch with 2 friends that go to the AP, and over lunch talked about my gallstone issues I've had and thoughts about doing a cleanse I've been scared to do the cleanse because of what it entails, and in the past, and I was scared to do it. So here's my dream. In my dream, I saw a green snake in my house, and I grabbed him like a snake catcher by the head. He was feisty viper trying to bite me. I walked him out of my house and tossed him into the bushes. I went back into my house, and then I saw a very large yellow snake in a bush outside the slider door, entangled in a bush. This snake was very large, like a boa. This snake was yellow with some white on him, but too large for me to get, but seemed fine there in the bush. So I didn't disturb it. I slowly closed the door, the slider door that was partially opened, which made me wonder if there were other snakes that had got into the house. Then I woke up. I thought that was an interesting dream of me tossing out this nasty viper snake. So I took down the dream from the traditional, and I wanted to see what it had to say. And of course, there's a whole lot I went into that dream from a modern perspective, but here we are looking at it from the ancient perspective. So I look in the 9th house, nothing's in the 9th house, and then I look in the 10th house, and I can see Saturn is sitting in the 10th house. So Saturn becomes the significator of the dream. So it's something which brings fear. And of course, I'm stating in the very beginning, I'm scared of doing the flush of I was going to do this health cleanse thing. And it's sitting in Sagittarius. So the source of the dream is the 10th house. So this is an authority or a king. So maybe an authority stressing me out. And then the sign qualities of the significator of the dream, it's Sagittarius. Because Saturn is in Sagittarius, so we look at masculine. So sunken place, struggle to climb up and out, narrow place, or a place breaking away beneath the feet. None of that made any sense to me. And then it's fire. Someone hung or burned, fog, blackness, obscure, mistiness. I would say maybe obscure would fit, because I really don't know what the process would, how it would work for me if I did the cleanse. I was just fearful. Then the effect of the dream, I look to the moon. The moon's in the 4th house in Gemini. So it's a mutable sign. So it's something will appear from the dream. And then the outcome of the dream is the relationship between the significator of the dream, which is Saturn, the Lord of the Ascendant, which is Jupiter. And Jupiter is in the 8th house in a sextile to Saturn, but it's in a trine to the moon. So that's a positive from the Jupiter trining the moon. And then I look, Venus is in the 2nd with Mars, so they're kind of not helping out there a lot, but they're trining Saturn, so positive, but because Mars is in the 2nd house with the Venus, how much more positive. But so I would say with the Jupiter in trine to the moon, that's helpful, and sextile to the Saturn, also helpful. So long story short, I had thought about a cleanse because I had been struggling with issues with my gallstones. I tried to manage them by diet, of course. I didn't want to have surgery to have my gallbladder out or anything. But I kept having repeat attacks, and so I was like, I got to do something, and my doctor's going to send me off, and then she's going to just demand this. So I just basically grabbed the bull by the horns after I got back from the AP, and I decided to do it, and I'm glad I did. It did help me for some time. I've only had one issue since that time, and that was a year ago, and that's not bad. So that was the outcome. So I did go through a cleanse process. So it took a whole weekend. It's totally nasty drinking some of that stuff, but I did it. And And it really did help me in the long run, but it was kind of like a 4-day process, 5-day process. Yeah. So that's kind of cool. Okay. Okay, here's an interesting dream that I had last year when I went to Italy. So I'm in Lecce, Italy when I have this dream. I'm away from home. And this dream is on September 12th of 2017. Maybe I'll find it here. Bear with me here. Okay, here we go. Okay, so the first part of the dream, I can see my daughter's friend, Jesslyn. She's just standing there in the dream. No background. She's just in this like space standing there, just kind of looking at her. I can see her whole body, just like for a minute. And then it goes to the next dream. So I have no idea what Jesslyn was doing in the dream, maybe pointing to my daughter because she's like a girlfriend from her class. But in the dream, I'm walking on a grass hill with family, friends, and my daughter, Sydney. She runs out ahead of me, and then I don't see her. We all stopped, paused in our walking, and we were spread out, sitting below trees in the park. A black Scottish dog was pawing at the ground next to me where I sat. He was doing that little growl that dogs do and pawing a lot. I wondered what he had tuned into underneath the surface. I looked closer and I saw a hand surface from the ground just by the dog's nose. I had reached to grab the hand and the earth opens up a bit and I can see several children, including Sydney. I'm helping them out of the ground. They are dazed, not seeming awake, as if shocked by something. There is also a teacher with them. I help them out of the ground one by one, and one of them has a book. It has a lot of print on the cover, and I recognize 2 words, stars and the name Bernie. I yell for help for someone to call 911 so they can get help, and then I wake up. Okay, so this dream was really vivid for me, and I really sensed I was really concerned about the children, and the dog was like a really important symbol in the dream. And so I had this dream, and the next day, which I find out that my daughter's bird, her little parakeet that she'd had for like 2 years, died. So my daughter was actually going through a real life kind of, underworld death experience of her pet. Also at this time, I think it was the next day or 2 days later, there was a shooting at a high school where the mascot of the high school was the black Scottish dog. And when I learned of that, I think I learned about it through social media because I was clear in Italy, so I didn't have access to all the news channels, but it came through on social media. And I remember going, oh my gosh, this is probably connected to that dream. So from a modern perspective, I kind of figured this is kind of giving me insight to that. But now looking at the chart of when I woke up, which was 7:55 Lecce, Italy, this is the chart from the ancient perspective. Oh, wait a minute. I just realized that it's like, I pulled it from a porphyry. Okay, so I'm gonna have to like go by whole sign house in my head here. So the first house will be Libra. So we have Jupiter in the first house. But we're looking at the 9th house first. And let me just count around. That's right. Yeah, that's right. So 9th house is Gemini. So the first planet we see is the moon. Moon in Gemini. So moon becomes a significator of the dream. Interesting, moon is sailors, sea, swimming, mother, or other women. So it could be that it's relating to me and my connection here somehow to the divination process. in Gemini. The source of the dream is the topics of the houses ruled by the moon. So look for Cancer. So that's 10th house. So that would be my career or my public persona. It says authority or king. Okay. The sign qualities of the significator of the dream. So Gemini is masculine. Yeah. So sunken place, struggled to climb out. Sunken place, the kids were under the earth. Yep. Struggled to climb up and out. Yes, I was trying to get the kids out of the earth. So that all makes sense. Narrow place, yes. Place breaking away beneath the feet. I guess you could say that from the earth opening up. And then it was air, birds, winds, climbing trees, flying, being chased. And essentially, Sydney's bird is dying during this time. So it's not in the dream, but the bird is in the real life, a matter here. What was the other part? Maybe being chased. If I was to look at the other part of the dream where the kids of the high school. That's a possibility. Then the effect of the dream is the modality of the moon, which is mutable. Something will appear from the dream, which it did. And then we have the outcome of the dream, relationships between the significator of the dream, which is the moon, the Lord of the Ascendant, which is Venus. Venus is in Leo here. And so she's sextile, so she's activating, she's touching the moon, so she's helping the moon. The Jupiter is also helping the moon, but we're mainly looking at Venus because she's the ruler of the ascendant and the Lord of the Ascendant and the moon. Yeah. And other things touching the moon, I'm trying to see. Now, third house, we have Saturn in the Sag, which would be opposite the moon, which to me does have some of the stress and fear involved with the death as part of that detail that I'm experiencing as a mother, being so far away from home and I'm having this dream. That's a possibility here. Yeah. Mars is square the moon, so that's stressing the moon as well as a malefic from the traditional method, from the mutable sign of Virgo to the, yeah. So, and it can speak to the challenge there. Okay. And here's one more. The Longhorn Stampede dream I had in November of last year as well. Okay, this is a dream I had. In my dream, I'm visiting with friends, sitting on a couch in a very nice house. Some were coming in late after putting their boat into moorage, and they were cold as it was a fall day. Then as we were all visiting, there was a loud sound and then a stampede of steers, longhorns, came rushing in the room and towards the place I was sitting. I simply pulled into a ball where I sat and closed my eyes. Oddly, none touched me or trampled me as I thought they would. They rushed past what seems like a couple of long minutes. I thought I'd be crushed. After a couple of minutes, I heard a loud whistle, and opening one of my eyes in the dream, I saw one of the women calling out like a rodeo clown with a red ball. She was bouncing, perhaps to distract the stampede. I then, in slow motion, everything is in slow motion now, ran at my top speed towards the bathroom of all places and seeking a private stall, not finding a private one. I could feel in my body the terror of fear from the after effect of this moment, thinking I'd be crushed in the stampede, even though I wasn't. I recall trying to put a put a liner, you know, the toilet liner in the seat as I needed to go pee. Then I woke up and actually I did need to use the bathroom. So, okay, there's a lot going on this from a modern perspective, and I'm going to explore it from the ancient here. And so let me see what I got. November. Maybe I didn't write that one down. Okay, so we're looking in the 9th house. There's nothing in the 9th house. Looking in the 10th house, nothing in the 10th house. And we go to the 1st house, and we have Jupiter as the first sign, or the first planet. So Jupiter becomes the significator of the dream. Jupiter in Scorpio. Excuse me. Jupiter symbolizes or signifies delightful things, kings, and magnets. And that totally does not seem like the dream, but okay, we'll go with it. And the topic of houses ruled by the planetary significator of the dreams, where Sag and Pisces are. 2nd house, which is valuable, your substance and your money. And then Pisces is hidden here. It's in the 5th house. Yeah. So Pisces, 5th house, children. Or what do they say here? 5th house, yeah. 5th house is children. It's November 3rd. Okay. So money and children. The 2nd is a thing I look at, or the 3rd or 4th, sign qualities of the significator. So Jupiter's in Scorpio, so we want to look at feminine, high elevated place. For falling from a high place, sea storms, great winds. I would say it's possibly more sea storms, something stormy going on in the life. And then water, boarding a ship, drowning, shipwreck, flood. None of those make sense to me at the moment. Maybe drowning in a metaphorical way, but I think they took things literally. So, effective dream modality of the moon sign. The moon is in Taurus in the 7th house. So that's in fixed. So the dream will have an effect for good or bad. Okay, so we can keep going. Relationship between the significator of the dream. So it's Jupiter. The Lord of the ascendant is Mars from a traditional standpoint. So we look at Mars. Mars is in the 12th. So Mars really can't see the 1st house. It's in a sextile to the 2nd house. So it doesn't have a lot going on with a sextiles are kind of neutral. They don't have a lot of energy behind them from the traditional standpoint, but it's visible to it. So it does give it some stress a little bit, because they always looked at Mars as not very positive. And then the 5th house is Pisces, so children. So Mars doesn't have the visibility there, since 5th to this 12th in conjunct. They didn't look at that. But Saturn is in the square to the 5th house. So, but that's kind of going beyond what they would look at as the significator. So, but the moon in the 7th has a ray from Jupiter from the 1st, so there's some positive there. So I'm not getting much from this, from the angle, from that. It's like it's something positive to have from the dream. But I wouldn't say that I could pick up anything positive from this outside of, it would totally go inside the camp of more of a modern perspective, because after this dream, like a day or two later, was the shooting in America, the one in Texas at the church. And the guy who jumped in the truck to chase the guy down, when he was interviewed on the news, all over his neck was this huge tattoo of a longhorn. Longhorn. And I was floored and shocked in that moment. So I felt like, okay, that's kind of what this is connecting me to in the outside world. Now, modern perspective would go into, my own personal life and all of that. But to me, I know from my own personal exposure to how my natal chart is, I have Neptune and Mars square from Scorpio to Pisces. So I tend to kind of pick up on these things like this that happen in the collective. And I don't always know when one is going to be specifically to some specific thing. I can get an array of dreams and only one, in a few months will connect to anything. But I've had that now multiple times, so that's the only thing I could connect to it, because I was emotionally disturbed like anybody else connected to these events. So from the ancient, it made no sense to me whatsoever in that regard, and except for maybe the Jupiter sitting in Scorpio, because of the Scorpio connection to the darker shadow kind of experience that would be, Scorpio type experience, and then me picking up on it from the dream part. Anyway, I thought that was worth exploring. I have another one. How are we doing on time, Linda?
We've got 10 minutes.
I can do one more. It's a little lighter than the last one.
Okay.
If you want. Okay, I just had this dream, and maybe it's about astrology and dreams because it just happened. So this was February 20th, and I woke up at 7:03 a.m., and the part of the dream that I recall is I'm a student in some school, and Alex is actually an astrologer who is, I think she works out of Great Britain. She put on the huge astrology conference that was in India, or partnered up with that. So some people know her. She is my teacher in the dream. And I'm taking notes as we're going to have an exam soon. She talks really fast. She's hard to keep up with for my notes. Then I realize I'm spacing out, like my brain is on overload. And there's stuff near me on the desks, like people's coats. My coat and lunch bag is in the pile somewhere. I'm talking with the teacher, Alex, when the students have left, as I'm trying to understand something that hasn't sunk in yet. She tells me that I have to listen better or not space out during lectures. I tell her I respect her, but honestly, the brain can only take so much in before it needs to integrate what it has learned. Kind of like when people go to sleep at night to rest, and stuff gets dumped into the long-term memory from the short-term memory. She laughed a little and smiled and told me to bring 3 lunches the next day. I assume one for me, one for her, and maybe another student. I see myself studying while I'm making the lunches at home. I'm getting ready for the exam that I'm preparing for that is the next day. Then I wake up. So, a little bit more humorous dream. I thought it was interesting because when a number shows up in a dream, I'm always curious about the number, and interesting, the number 3 shows up in this dream, and I always think that's important, especially in astrology, the number 3. So let's look at the ancient method to see how this looks. Jupiter, right away, in the 9th house, is the significator of the dream. And let's see here. So that would be delightful things, kings, magnets. And let's see, the next one is the source of the dream is either Sagittarius and Pisces. So Pisces is the 1st, so it's me, and Sagittarius is the 10th, so it's an authority. So it's me and an authority, okay? And sign qualities of the significator of the dream. Jupiter's in Scorpio, so it's feminine, water, fixed, high elevated place, fear of falling from a high place, sea storms, great winds. Maybe high elevated place, maybe fear of falling from a high place, from myself and my career, or myself and with an authority, or authority as an authority, maybe that. And then what is the modality of the moon? Oh wait, we want to go into the mode here. Water, boarding a ship, drowning, shipwreck, or flood. None of those make sense to me, except for that the brain is flooded with so much information. That's a possibility here. Listening to the lecture and needing time to integrate it. And then the effect of the dream, the modality of the moon is Aries. So this is like a fluff dream, so it's cardinal. It will disappear and not have any signification for the dreamer. So then we would stop right there. But I also think that there's some significance to the dream for what it offers from a modern perspective about my own personal approach about how I study. And it's telling me how I tend to take in a lot of information. I need time to let it absorb. But it did have something of value to me because I am a notorious for taking on more and more and more and more. And I just need to let it sink in.
Okay, Sarah, thank you so much for sharing all of that with us. It's fantastic. If you'd like to stop the share and we'll just go back to the panel.
Sure.
And so please go ahead, anyone, if you have any questions or comments, anything you'd like to share with us.
Hi, Sarah, I had a question. Is there anything from the traditional standpoint about dreams that, say if you have a series of dreams, like the same, or like repeating themes maybe? Or would that be more modern, you know?
There might be some in the material that I just purchased from a book, because I think there's more information about repeating dreams that Bonatti did do in his material, but I'd have to source that out for you and get back to you on that once I look into it, because I don't have that from the material that Demetria gave me.
Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Okay.
Thank you, Sarah.
Oh, go ahead.
That was really interesting and kind of gives a perspective on how they used to look at things. And I think, going forward, it's a basis. And then I think, maybe what we're doing now is expounding on it. I appreciate your work. Thanks.
It's my curiosity that I can't contain. How does this work?
Okay, Sarah, so we'll look forward to the next meeting where we will look at the modern interpretation techniques. So I'm looking forward to that. And thank you, everyone. Thank you, Sarah. Catch you all next. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.
Bye.